What's happening, world? B Marsh Boxing back at it with another boxing video. So, Chris Eubank Jr. been training in the United States down there in Florida with Roy Jones Jr. ever since this COVID-19 hit. As a matter of fact, I think he made his American debut last in his last fight versus Matt Korobov, and that was on the PBC. I believe PBC on Showtime. Okay. Unfortunately, the fight only lasted 2 rounds because the man Matt Korobov popped his shoulder out the socket. I know how that feels. It's not a good look, you know what I mean? So Chris Eubank Jr. got awarded the victory, and I think he's holding some kind of interim title, if I'm not mistaken, either WBA or WBC, one of the two. But at the end of the day, Chris Eubank Jr., a Triple G fight eluded him in 2014. We all thought that that was going to be next up for Triple G versus Eubank Jr. in 2014 in England. But somehow them plans went awry and the fight didn't happen. As a matter of fact, Triple G opted to fight a smaller guy in Kell Brook, 147 pounder at the time, fighting for the middleweight crown. You know what I mean? Now, Chris Eubank Jr. has no opponent as of yet. The PBC is yet to resume since this COVID. They do have some dates they've announced that's going to be in when is it, August. I think the first weekend of August, you know what I mean? um but no big fights of any, no big fights on the PBC. As a matter of fact, nobody's really going to put on no big fight besides Bob Arum, who's looking at Teofimo Lopez versus Lomachenko in October, and Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder in December in Las Vegas. So Chris Eubank Jr. has no opponent as of right now, but better yet, even better, Canoli has no opponent as of today as I make this video on the, what is it today, the 8th or the 9th of July. I made a video last week about Canoli's management, his promoters, matchmakers over there on Golden Boy talking about they're not going to fight a world champion on Mexican Independence Day weekend because that's when they're hoping Canoli will be ready to get back in the ring the second weekend of September. I threw out a bunch of names out there, but it looks like Chris Eubank Jr. might probably be leading the way into the Canoli Sweepstakes. Does that mean he'll get the fight? Time will tell. It's a 50-50 shot. Either he gets it, gets the Canoli fight, or he doesn't. You know what I mean? But Chris Eubank Jr., I think, would be a great fight for the man Canoli. Eubank Jr. has his flaws, so does Canoli. Who's going to exploit each other's flaws? If Chris Eubank Jr. can defeat the man Canoli, then he'll be a instant mega superstar in the game of boxing, and he'll ascend in the pound for pound list where he's never been. But according to some publications like Golden Boy, Canoli is the number one pound for pound fighter on the planet. I disagree, but the pound for pound thing is subjective. But I totally disagree with that, and I'm not agreeing with that one bit. But that's neither here nor there. Like I said, whether I give Canoli credit or not doesn't pay his bills. You know what I'm saying? And it don't even pay Golden Boy Ring Magazine bills because I don't even buy Ring Magazine anymore. You know what I'm saying? But Chris Eubank Jr., I think, would be a guy Canoli would pick. Does that mean he'll be next? Probably not. Expect a guy from Europe, a guy maybe like from England, like John Ryder. Canoli, for the most part of his career, this second half of his career, Canoli's not going to have a lot of American fighters or American bred fighters or even Mexican fighters on his resume. The majority of fighters, I'm sure Canoli will pick because he does pick and choose at this stage of his career whom he's going to fight. Nine times out of ten, they're gonna be European guys. You know what I mean? Absolutely. Because we've been had Jamal Charlo has been in the United States his whole career. He's holding the WBC belt that the man Canoli decided to vacate to be elevated to a franchise champion. Basically, the belt designed for you to duck your mandatories and avoid dangerous mandatories so you can pick and choose whom you want. Lomachenko does have also a franchise title, and the same criteria goes for him. Duck your mandatories, pick and choose whom you're going to fight, and avoid the dangerous mandos. But, Canoli has every opportunity to fight all the great fighters on the planet, especially in the three divisions he's been campaigning at since 2019. Now, if Canoli would go up to 175, where his last fight was at 175, and beat a guy like Beterbiev for the lineal WBC and IBF titles, he'll get 100% credit from not just me, but you know, boxing enthusiasts who really know the sport. That'll be a great win. That'll be actually facing adversity and overcoming adversity. But we shall see. I highly doubt he fights these guys. At 168, he's already vowed to fight no Mexican fighters. So we could already put the David Benavidez fight on the side. That ain't gonna happen. There's Caleb Plant over there on the PBC. That fight would actually make for good ratings. The only white Caucasian American champion in the United States versus Canoli. You know what I'm saying? That'll actually do for good numbers. We got the Callum Smiths and the Billy Joe Saunders over there holding two titles. Respectfully, both of them have the WB. They each have a portion of the titles. Canoli was trying to fight Billy Joe Saunders, but he's already put it up out there that he ain't fighting no champions coming back from this COVID thing. Billy Joe Saunders talking about he's not gonna let Canoli use him as a stepping stone, whatever that's supposed to mean. I'm not even gonna get into that because at the end of the day, Canoli calls the shots, and he said he ain't fighting no world champions in his first fight back in September, Mexican Independence Day weekend. So that's where it stands. What Canoli says, what Canoli wants, Canoli gets. You know what I mean? So Chris Eubank Jr. has been clamoring for this fight since last year, since 2019. As a matter of fact, I remember he even said that it's inevitable. This was last year. Over a year ago, he said it's inevitable that he will fight Canoli. I like that fight. I do. Chris Eubank Jr.'s unconventional, crude style versus Canoli's counterpunching and upper body movement and the body punches. You know what I'm saying? I would favor Canoli to win the fight. Chris Eubank Jr. has been on the boxing scene for a very long time now and hasn't sniffed a world title. You know what I'm saying? So, has he improved? Time will tell. It looked like the man Matt Korobov was on his way to piecing him up in the first two rounds of the fight that ended prematurely because of the bad shoulder suffered by Matt Korobov. But like I said, I favor Canoli. But does that mean he's gonna face him next? I highly doubt it. Time will tell. I will be shocked. But don't be surprised if you see guys like John Ryder. A guy like Sergey Devrchenko has thrown his name into the Canoli sweepstakes as well. I see Canoli fighting a John Ryder before he fights Sergey Devrchenko and or Chris Eubank Jr. That's just a fact. That's how Canoli's been moving lately. You know what I'm saying? That's why he was ready to fight the Billy Joe Saunders. He just beat Kovalev. He fought Rocky Fielding not too long ago. I think on the DAZN debut, his DAZN debut. You know what I mean? So we shall see. Let me know in the comment section if you guys think that the man. Do you think Canoli will be fighting Chris Eubank Jr.? Chris Eubank Jr. has been in the States training with Roy Jones. You know what I mean? I hope Roy Jones can actually give him some pointers to improve because in all his step up fights, they haven't even been close, man. That's just a fact. And that's hence why he's lost. Look at the fight with George Groves. Got taken to school by George Groves. Look at the fight with Billy Joe Saunders. The first half was all Billy Joe Saunders, at least 7 rounds. The second half was all Chris Eubank Jr., hence mostly because the man, Billy Joe Saunders, tends to gas out. But I will give the man, James DeGale, credit for retiring. He got up out the game at the right time, absolutely. Unlike a guy like Andre Ward or Tim Bradley. I still feel like Tim Bradley and Andre Ward still had some more fight left in them, some more bigger fights to make. Gotta give James DeGale credit. He got the F up out the game when he took that thorough ass whooping from Chris Eubank Jr. Nothing against Chris Eubank Jr., but when a guy like Chris Eubank Jr. washes you like that, and the writing was on the wall because the guy James DeGale had barely won back his title, the IBF super middleweight strap versus Caleb Truex in the rematch. He had barely got it back. I had him winning by 1 point. So if a guy like Chris Eubank Jr., who are like I said, very unconventional, very crude, rudimentary style, still needs a lot of fine tuning and polishing, needs to tighten up his punches, set up his punches in a more in a better fashion. He got a lot of irons to wrinkle. I'm sorry, a lot of wrinkles to iron on in his skill set. If he can do that to James DeGale, then James DeGale knew it's absolutely about that time for me to get the F up out the game. And as of right now, that's still the skill set that I see in the man, Chris Eubank Jr. That's why I think a Canoli fight is a possibility. 50-50, just like everybody else. It's either going to happen or it's not. Be more boxing your thoughts and comments. Let me know what y'all think about this fight. Would you like to see this fight? Do you think it's a viable option for the man Canoli in his first fight coming off of this pandemic and Mexican Independence Day weekend in September? Let me know in the comment section. Cannoli, and then will it be behind closed doors without no crowd, or will they have a crowd? There's a lot of if, ands, buts, or maybe, so we shall see. Be more responsible in your thoughts and comments. I'm gone. Peace.